Now in the automotive space, there are many companies that we all know and love. You know, most famously probably Ford, maybe Mercedes, maybe Lamborghini, Ferrari. But there are brands out there that are very niche or simply don't exist anymore. Some of the more famous ones that Americans would know is Pontiac, Mercury, Saturn. Those were, you know, some staple, actually, aside from Mercury, GM products that unfortunately just didn't pan out. Plymouth was a Dodge one that unfortunately died in 2002. Most of them died due to the recession though. Now GM had a lesser known brand that they unfortunately ended up selling off and then killing off because it just didn't work. And of course, I'm talking about the Swedish firepower, which is known as SAAB. Now, SAAB has a really interesting, I guess you could say, company history because they originally built fighter planes for the Swedish military, which were used in like World War II and whatnot, and the Cold War. But then they started building cars. So officially, SAAB was found in 1945. That's after the war. That's officially when they were built, or they were found as a car company. Founded, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But their first car didn't come until 1949, which was the SAAB 92. It sold pretty well. It was a basic economy car that most Swedish people ended up buying. Again, you know, for the national thing, it's our car, we're gonna go out and buy it. Just like how Americans would go to Ford, Chevy, or Dodge, or Germans would go to Volkswagen, BMW, or Mercedes, same concept. But it wasn't the most popular thing. Then they released the SAAB 900, which was probably their most famous car aside from that time. So after the 92 was the 900. They were pretty famous economy cars. I mean, they were also known as tanks. They were kind of like Volvo. They were very reliable and they were known as good cars. But they were also really niche. You know, they weren't as popular as like the American brands or really as the German brands. They weren't as luxurious as them. They were just kind of a little niche brand. And that's kind of the history. That's really what you could describe SAAB as being a niche brand. The probably most famous one, the way I can think of, is the SAAB 9000. The turbo model specifically, you know, the one I'm thinking of right now, it's black, it's got the hatchback styling, it's the 80s boxy design. That's what I'm thinking of, you know, and one of the most famous features of SAABs, and again, why I say they're niche, most normal cars, you know, you get in every key, you put it in, you start it, or now push buttons and all that kind of stuff. SAAB didn't have that. They had keys, of course, but it wasn't anywhere on the dash. The key to start the car was right next to you, behind the shifter. So you would put the key in there, turn it, start up, kind of like a fighter jet. Pretty kind of cool, right? You put it in there, you start the car up, and it would go. And they never had really, I don't think SAAB ever built like V8s or anything like that. Most of their cars were inline fours, maybe some V6, I could be wrong, but mostly inline fours with turbos, which, again, economy, gas mileage, and decent power was kind of their thing. And it was just niche, you know. If you wanted to not be boring like your neighbor who drove a Volvo 240 wagon, you went out and you bought a SAAB because you still get the Swedish build reliability and kind of toughness, but it's niche, it looks weird, and it's just weird. Now, later on when SAAB ended up getting acquired by GM in the 90s, it kind of turned everything around because what GM really started doing was they kind of killed off a lot of the production on a lot of the cars. I mean, they still built a few of them like the convertibles and some of the 9000s or the 92, or I'm thinking of the 93 Aeros, but a lot of them started being GM badge engineered cars. Like for example, one of the most famous ones is the SAAB 93, which I believe was a rebadged Chevy Trailblazer. And I mean, the Trailblazer had so many rebadges. There were Oldsmobiles, there was GMCs, there was Isuzus, SAABs. I mean, they had a lot. Basically, GM just kind of said, we're done producing these weird cars. Nobody really buys them that much. We're just gonna slap a SAAB badge on a GM product and sell it. And they did. I mean, that's just kind of what happened for a while. You know, you had the SAAB 93 Wagon Aero, which was basically a rebadged Subaru Impreza WRX, which at least that was kind of cool. I mean, you know, there was a cool car. It had the boxer for it. We knew what the WRX was. This was just a more luxurious looking car. But unfortunately, SAAB just wasn't doing well. And then in 2010, GM sold them to Spyker, a Dutch brand. If you guys have ever heard of Spyker, they're not around anymore either. But they were like a luxury, you know, brand that were around for basically a few years, nothing too crazy. I think only like maybe 8 years before they went defunct too. But in 2010, they were sold to them. They tried to bring some of the stuff back, didn't really work out much all that well. And then they were actually purchased by a company called NEVS, National Electric Vehicle Sweden. That was a brand that was created, and then they ended up buying SAAB and resuming some production, but it was mostly supposed to be EVs and hybrids. They didn't do any gas-powered vehicles or really much. It was mostly a electrified sort of version. I mean, their name was the National Electric Vehicle of Sweden, so yeah. And they continued production of some of the Saabs until 2016, when that's just when they called it quits. I mean, that's just when Saab has been dead officially 8 years now, which is a shame. Again, Saab, very niche brand. I mean, it wasn't anything big. It wasn't a Mercedes or it wasn't a Ford. It was just a niche brand that niche people bought. I mean, it was just kind of, I guess, a way to describe it. And, you know, it's one of those things where if you didn't want a Volvo and to be like your neighbor and boring, you bought a Saab. You still got a Swedish car. It was weird, but it was also built pretty well. So let me know down below. I've actually personally only ever been in a Saab once as a kid, but never again. I've never driven a Saab, never been in a Saab aside from that time as a kid, and I can't remember much. Let me know down below if you guys have owned them, or if your parents owned them, or grandparents, or whoever. Let me know what you guys think of them. Would you bring them back? And that's a really cool question I'd love to talk to you guys about. Would you bring the brand back if you could? And you know, why or why not? But thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you check out our channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.